Hello and welcome back to the channel, everybody. I am tired. We're going to start with that. We are going over Justin Baldoni's natal chart. Also, overnight, well, I found out overnight around 11 o'clock last night that he just dropped a lawsuit. So we're going to break it down. But my name is Ashley Brianna Eve, longtime professional astrologer with a love of pop culture. So I combine those two things for you on the channel. And today we are breaking down Justin Baldoni's natal chart by popular demand. You guys have been asking for it. And what I've been trying to do on the channel is do a little bit of shorter videos, picking out a couple of things that really stand out for me, but you guys are demanding longer ones. So let's dive in. Now, the first thing I want to talk about, couldn't sleep last night. First of all, couldn't fall asleep because I saw, it was about 11 o'clock, that his lawsuit, I'm sure it landed earlier in the day, but I just didn't see it. I was so busy. And he filed a $250 million lawsuit against the New York Times. And then I found out a couple minutes later that she dropped a lawsuit as well, which we're going to talk about on a different video. Today's just going to be a lot of videos. Pop culture is popping off on January 1st, 2025. So there's no rest for the wicked. So we'll look at that later, but I just want to touch on this really quick because, you know, I was pulling up his chart and I'll be honest, and this might get me canceled and people might be upset with me for saying this, but I actually like the energy of his chart. I feel like him and I would probably get along in like quote unquote real life. I mean, it's not to say energy of the chart can't be distorted energy, can't be shadow energy. Of course it can. I think the biggest issue between all three of them, and I'm going to show you guys in a human design breakdown later, because I'm also a human design expert and trained by the International Human Design School. I think the biggest issue from the get-go was the power dynamics between his energy, Ryan's energy, and Blake's energy. So I think it was just like written in the stars that they were going to have issues from the beginning. But when I look at his chart, I see someone that I think I would actually get along with and like to hang out with, but I also like kind of gritty energy. And let me just double check. We're going to do his human design later, but now I want to double check what his profile is. Just give me a second. Like, wait, what? I didn't even. Oh, yeah. I was just going to say he gives off that 5-line energy. Yeah. He gives off that 5th line energy. And if you guys have been in my world for a long time, you know that I love 5th line energy. It's really gritty, but it can be taken the wrong way. And when we're looking at 5th line energy from human design, it's the kind of energy of like Britney Spears has a 5th line. So it's that energy, and Amy Winehouse. It's that energy of like, it's like burn the witch kind of energy, right? Even though he's a guy, but still. People project on you that you're something, whatever. Like for him, you're projecting on him, and he played into it. He did play into it. Like the feminist vibe and the like ally vibe for women. And then as soon as with that 5th line, as soon as someone doesn't like live up to it, or we perceive they don't, right? Our projections, we perceive our projections were wrong. We then project that they're a failure, and then we burn them at the cross, and then we want to tear them down, and we want to ruin them and destroy them. So they're not living up to our ideals. So it's so funny. And I had programmed his human design chart into my software, but I hadn't even noticed. I was looking at it more so between all of them. I hadn't even noticed that he's a 5th line. And I was like, literally the words were going to come out of my mouth. He gives me the energy of a 5th line, and I love 5th line energy. So that's not to say he couldn't have done the things that she's claiming that were done on set, right? I'm not saying that's not a possibility. And I do like his energy. And I think a lot of people have problems with him as well because he has the 5th line energy. And I believe she's a 2-4. And again, I'll pull them up later. I don't even know why I'm getting. Yeah, she's a 2-4. So the 4, if you put a 5th line in human design up against a 4th line in human design, and there's a conflict, you're going to tend to take the 4th line's energy. It gives off more of like that friendly vibe or that friend vibe. All right, let's break this down because I think this is significant. And I don't know, guys. I've said it in every video. You need to be careful. You need to be careful because everything's PR, everything's manipulated. Your attention, your clicks garners money. And I think even for the New York Times, was it $1 to even get the article? So God knows how much they made on this. Everything is for clicks. Everything is trying to sway your attention. Everything is trying to get, like, it's like that tug of war, right? Like, how far can we move public opinion over to our side? And you're very naive if you think that she's not doing it too. So Justin Baldoni files $250 million lawsuit against New York Times over Blake Lively's story. It relied on her self-serving narrative. I just want to point out a couple things. This is, to me, very interesting because you're going to see, especially if you combine this video and then later when I do the human design one, if you combine the two and then look at these two videos with fresh eyes, this is just very interesting to me. And I wanted to point this out. This is a conversation that happened on June 2nd, 2023. This is according to what his team, like, everyone's going to be leaking stuff. I think it was over an 80-page report. I've not gone through the entire report that I usually follow like Emily D. Baker for that, but I haven't gone through the entire report. But I have been saying, like, not everything's out yet. I've been telling you guys in all my astrology and tarot, not everything's out yet. Both sides have things to hide. When I pulled the tarot, I just posted this morning a tarot reading and I said, guys, like, devil kept coming up. There's something, there's illusions. You're not seeing everything yet. I told you guys over and over and over again. And it's not that I don't believe she wasn't uncomfortable on set. And please don't misconstrue what I'm saying. I just think both have their own narratives and are, as PR battles go, positioning their narrative at the forefront. That's just what it is, right? What's the saying? There's 3 sides to every story, like his side, her side, and the truth. So this is really interesting to me. On June 2nd, 2023, Blake Lively began a text exchange with her It Ends With Us director and co-star Justin Baldoni that blamed her assistant for not getting her an updated batch of script pages. She didn't realize they were new, Lively wrote. New pages can always be sent to me as well, please. The actress signed the missive with an X, universal symbol for a kiss. Lively followed up with another text shortly thereafter. I'm just pumping in my trailer if you want to work out our lines. Baldoni responded, copy, eating with crew, and we'll head that way. 18 months later, that interaction was depicted in a New York Times bombshell report in a far more sinister light. The Times wrote, Baldoni repeatedly entered her makeup trailer uninvited while she was undressed, including when she was breastfeeding. So it looks like, from what is coming to light now, I told you guys, the devil card kept popping out. I tried to keep putting it back in the damn deck, and the devil card kept popping out. I told you guys illusions. I told you guys we didn't have the full story yet. Why this is significant to me, and we're going to get into his natal chart, but this is setting the stage, and it's setting the stage especially when you see my human design breakdown. So I'm trained by the International Human Design School, and so that, it's not me making it up. It's me taking the actual science of differentiation. I want you to see, because these are little bricks or little stepping stones I want to give you for you to make your own decision. I don't want to tell you who to believe. I don't fully believe either of them, if I'm being honest. I think both have a narrative they're trying to put to the public. I don't believe either of them fully, I should say, fully. I think there's the truth that's going to come out, and I think they both have things to hide. That's what I believe. And I do believe she felt uncomfortable. And I do believe that we're going to find out more on her side and his side. So why I think this is significant. So I was watching a video. Emily D. Baker is one of my favorite lawyers. You guys know if you've been here for a while. I'm a very proud law nerd. If you love pop culture legal commentary, you have to check out Emily D. Baker. She was on some guy's channel, Nick something. I just found him the other day. And I really liked the commentary that everyone was giving on this video until it got to a certain point. I'm going to read you. I wrote a couple notes down. Emily had made a comment, and this is no slight on Emily. I love her. She said, even, it looked like the only place essentially that Blake obviously had to, this isn't a direct quote, that Blake had to breastfeed was her trailer. And so she had nowhere else to go. Essentially these people are coming in uninvited. And one of the hosts of this channel said, well, yeah, Justin will walk into a room with a woman breastfeeding and say, I'm okay, or it's okay, I'm not uncomfortable, and that she shouldn't be uncomfortable because he's an ally. This is why it's so important. public narrative. Your attention is worth money. Your position on this is worth money. And so what it looks like is that essentially things were cut and cherry picked, and communications were cut off or stripped of context to mislead. And that's the accusations he's giving. And I must say, if in her complaint, she was saying, well, he was coming into my trailer while I was breastfeeding and that made me uncomfortable. If it's true that the text before was, can you come to my trailer and we can run lines while I breastfeed? I don't know. So I wanted to just break this down and show you guys that this new complaint's out before we get into his chart and before we get into the human design of it all later. So this is going to be an 87, I think I said 88, 87 page complaint. And yeah, it's very interesting just to see some of the stuff. But let's get into his chart now. That's going to give context. Now let me pull up. All right, let's get into his natal chart now, guys. So much fun. I'll make myself smaller so we can see his a little bit bigger. I'm big on esoteric astrology. Here's the thing. I'm not married to one perspective of astrology. You're going to get a little bit of Vedic, a little bit of Western, a little bit of intuitive channeling, a little bit of esoteric. I love the asteroids. So it's likely a different approach than what you're used to. And I think it's what makes my approach unique and special. But, I'm biased because I am me. Let's break down what we're seeing here for his chart. Now, the first thing that really comes out for me is this is, again, when we combine it with the fifth line in human design, someone that's maybe not necessarily overly easy to work with, but I think the problem with that, especially when we consider the fifth line in human design, I think the problem with that more than anything is projections. You project on him that you should be like this, or I think you're like that, or this is how I want to take you in this circumstance. And then he doesn't live up to it, or he's not like that. And then it's like, tear him down. Like, that's very much that fifth line energy. As Ra Ruhu had said, he was the clarion, if you will, of the human design system. You burn them at the stake, right? You burn them at the cross. So I do feel a piece of this not being easy to work with energy is also projections and people's ideas of like how he should be. And I do think that he plays into the projections. And the problem with the fifth line is you have to be very careful about the projections you play into, because if you don't live up to them, again, the public is going to turn on you like that. People will have, and that's what we saw in the narrative, right? Like everyone was Justin, and then like, boom, no one was on his side. And to me, that's a big piece of the human design piece, or from the human design piece. I do think, and we'll break it down, but I do think there is this potential for emotional outbursts, and it's probably something he's been working on most of his life, to be honest. Again, when we're looking at that fifth line energy, it can come across, Ra used to say with the fifth line that it's nasty. And I turn nasty into gritty because nasty doesn't necessarily mean mean. It just means kind of unfiltered. You say it how you mean it. And of course, that can be taken wrong by people. The first thing that really caught and one thing I want to say is when we're looking at Blake and Ryan, they're not easy to work with either. Like this isn't a matter of, and we're going to see it when I break down all three of their human design charts later. And Ryan's a 5-1, Justin's a 3-5, Blake's a 2, is a 2-4. Let me double check so I don't misspeak, a 2-4. So you have like the butting of heads with Ryan and Justin right off the bat. You have Blake, which is the 4. Oh my goodness. Yeah. So this was just written in the stars to have problems from the beginning, to have problems from day one. All right. Let's stop talking about human design. We'll talk about that later. The first thing that really caught my energy when I look at things in a chart, Pluto's one that really catches my energy, draws my eye immediately. To me, it's very much that dark goddess energy. And I like working with the dark goddess asteroids and points in astrology. And so I immediately go to Pluto, especially for his chart. Well, why did my eye directly go to Pluto with his chart? Is a stellium in astrology. So when we're looking at this, it's called stellium. And so see how these three planetary bodies are really close? This, when we're looking at it, for anyone that, I kind of like to explain things as well. When we're looking at the three planets, really close in a zodiac sign or a house in a person's birth chart, that can amplify the traits and themes of that sign or house. And when you have that energy, especially with Pluto, it can have a significant impact on a person's life and including that personality. Now, second line, oh my goodness, now my head's stuck in human design. Second house, we have this Pluto energy, Scorpio energy with his moon and with Mars. We're going to see this come up over and over in his chart, but for me, a big piece of this is going to be the potential for impulsive action or almost like unstable emotional action. Like you're taking action from emotions rather than from a grounded place, or from like trying to destroy something rather than from a grounded place. It also has the potential for like massive transformation, spiritual growth, emotional growth. It has the potential for someone to be very emotionally intelligent, which I do think he is. And often emotional intelligence, like even if we look at his human design, he has an open solar plexus, which can be like you're bringing in all of the emotions, all of the energy around you. Well, it has two sides, right? You can amplify the emotions around you with an open solar plexus like he has. And then it can turn like what we're seeing here, the stellium is like, now I'm really emotional. Now I'm almost, I don't mean aggressive in like physically aggressive, but like blurring the lines from like verbally aggressive and assertive, right? Because this energy can be assertive. But if he's taking in the energy through his open solar plexus, amplifying it at 200%, and then feeling this energy as well, it's very possible that he's taking action from what we would call the not self in human design. And then it's becoming impulsive. It's not grounded. It's not going to be taken the right way from others. And it can come across as emotionally explosive. And then as soon as that happens, and I believe, especially with an open solar plexus, how I want you guys to think of that is an open solar plexus is where you go to school in life. Anything that's white in your human design chart, I'll break it down more for you guys on the human design version or video of his chart. But if you have an undefined or open solar plexus, it's white in your human design body graph. You go to school to life through there, right? You learn more about emotions. It has the potential when it's completely open to be very emotionally wise, have a lot of emotional intelligence. But again, when we have this energy here, it is a possibility, if we're looking at from the human design and astrology perspective, that he's taking actions from amplifying others' emotions. How that might look, for example, I'm not saying this did happen, but I want to give you an example. Say he did feel, and you're going to see it because I'm going to show you guys later his human design body graph with Ryan and Blake's. Say he felt like they were trying to control the set and they were trying to control the movie. We do see that in their body graphs where he's compromised and at a detriment in terms of power. Ryan especially holds power over him. And I don't mean in Hollywood, I mean in their body graph. And it can feel like someone's intentionally trying to like put you down or intentionally taking action against you. And so if he's in this not self or like a shadow aspect of this stellium, it can come across of like, I'm going to take these actions, Mars energy with Pluto, with the moon, I'm going to take these actions to like almost get back at you, right? Like you want to make me feel like that. Well, I'm going to make you feel like that. You want to make me feel like I'm insignificant, or you want to take control over my movie. Well, then I'm going to do things to make you uncomfortable, kind of thing. And I'm not saying in regards to like the harassment that she's saying, but it could be like, you know, throwing his weight around on set or whatever, right? But when we combine human design with this, it gives us a really big insight on right off the bat how we can be perceived. And we all have shadows. I have an open solar plexus. I can speak to the open solar plexus life. When it can be tough. My karma and my journey as well with an open solar plexus has been like navigating balance around emotions. And so I see that struggle. He has it harder with me than me because he has the Pluto there as well. But when we look at Pluto as well, especially with Mars, it can be a very tough energy, but very transformative. That's why I love Pluto. Pluto is very transformative. when we look at it from like the dark feminine, the dark goddess energy, Pluto's going to destroy everything that's not of soul. It's going to destroy everything that's not aligned. And that's good when we're working with that energy, not so good when we're not, because it can become this unstable energy. And Mars is very powerful as well. There's a lot of power there in terms of energy, action, desire, assertiveness. So when we have these two big, very energetically like dense, and I don't mean dense as in dumb, but just like him and her both have just a lot of energy. They have a lot of strong energy. They both want control. They both want power. So now we're putting someone in his chart that potentially could be taking actions or for the wrong reasons, or blurring the lines between aggression and assertiveness, or crossing boundaries and assertiveness. So he might see something as like, I'm being assertive, but really what's happening is crossing a boundary. And I feel like the two of them did not communicate well because they genuinely just didn't like each other. And so there could be a lot of blurring of lines of like, he thinks he's being assertive, or he thinks he's just like, this is just how I am. This is how I joke. This is just how I am. I don't understand. Or, you know, you told me in this text message that it was fine to come in and run lines while you're breastfeeding in your trailer. And now all of a sudden it's an issue. Like, I don't understand. Right. So I think there's a lot of misunderstanding just between the two of them. I'm going to pull up. No, she has an undefined solar plexus, but man, they compromise each other in a lot of ways. You're going to have to stay tuned for that reading of their human design charts, because that's just wild. I also believe with this energy, especially the fifth line energy, there's a potential to be very charming and to get along really well with people. I've seen people online say, yeah, but no one's come out in support of him. Like, and I saw Emily say this as well, Emily D. Baker, on an interview she was doing with someone on this topic. And she said, you know, usually you see people come out in support of someone. No one came out in support of him. I just get the feeling it's a little bit more complicated than that. I just get the feeling it's a little bit more complicated than that. You know, it's just more complicated than that. And for many reasons, but I'm just going to leave it there. I think it's a lot more complicated than that. I don't think it's that necessarily people don't support him. I think they do. I think it's a PR battle. I think people are nervous, afraid to take certain sides. That's what I'm going to say about that. And when we look at their human design charts as well, you're going to see later that he's actually compromised in areas of, again, power, struggle, leadership, control. So by both Blake and Ryan. So I have no doubt that he went into this relationship. I don't think they ever really got along, but of like, this is my movie. And because they compromised him, or they dominate his energy in human design, and that doesn't mean you intentionally do it, right? Have you ever, and I want to give you guys an example. Have you ever just been around someone you're like, I don't understand why we don't mesh, but we don't mesh. Like, you don't see my ideas. You just don't get me. Right. And the other person's like, no, like, I don't understand why you feel like that. That's the energy that we're seeing between the three of them from a human design perspective. Is it might not have been intentional that they were dominating him, but he felt that way. And I feel, especially when we look here with the Pluto, Moon, Mars, I feel like his emotions and his feelings weren't being considered, and they may not have realized they were doing that. It's just a nature of their human design charts. So again, make sure you subscribe. It's going to go live later on that, or post a video. I haven't decided if it's live or not. It's January 1st. And again, with the moon in this placement in Scorpio, I do think he's a sensitive person. I read an interview where someone described him as hippy dippy, and I believe it. With his sun in Aquarius, his moon in Scorpio, I really think he is kind of that hippy dippy guy, which, you know, I've seen him made fun of in different online publications and online of like, yeah, even as the man bun and stuff. I think it's like just who he is. Now, I'm from the spiritual world. I've been very deep in the spiritual world for a long time. Doesn't mean everyone that is like spiritual or a healer or whatever is good. No, there's a lot of issues. There can be a lot of issues of even abuse of power. in the spiritual world. So someone, just because they're, moon Scorpio sensitive person, they have a lot of emotional depth, they have an open solar plexus in human design. So there's a potential for a lot of emotional intelligence. Just because that's a potentiality doesn't mean that they're using that correctly, or they're in like what Gene Keys might call like the gift of it, right? Like they could be in the shadow of it. And if you're really sensitive and you have this placement here, well, are you taking it out on others, right? Are you taking things personally and then taking it out on others and not communicating properly? Now, again, if we look at Blake and Ryan, both have defined throats, and Justin Baldoni doesn't. So he might also, that's human design, he might have also felt like his emotions weren't being like heard, his feelings weren't being heard, that he no longer had a voice on the set. That's very possible. It's very possible. When you have two really strong defined throats, which Blake and Ryan have, and you have someone with an undefined throat and a ton of openness in Justin Baldoni's chart, a ton of openness, it's very possible that he just felt like they are always talking over me. I can never say anything anymore. I'm not allowed to have an opinion anymore. I would believe that if it came out that he said like, I didn't have an opinion anymore. My voice wasn't being heard. And then what ends up happening too, oh, look at guys, shit. I kept saying like, I'm going to leave the human design for the human design video. Here we go. However, what can end up happening for someone that has an undefined throat and other people have a defined throat is then you start speaking to get attention. And if we combine that with the Pluto, Moon, Mars, well, you're starting to speak to get attention and take action to get attention. The throat in human design represents action, manifestation, not like law of attraction manifestation, but like action, manifesting action. Oh, and wherever the connections are, thoughts, concepts, emotions into action, identity into action. But his is undefined. So what can end up happening when we combine the astrology with his human design chart is, well, now he's saying things to get attention. Does it justify saying things that are hurtful or harmful to others? No, of course not. Absolutely not. My background's in counseling, guys. Believe it or not, I know it's hard to believe. I started out as a counselor. Actually, well, I was an astrologer from the time I was a kid. I always loved the stars, and then felt like I had to be something like serious to be taken seriously in society. So I went to school for psychology. I was a counselor for a long time, worked in women's shelters, group homes with youth, in jails, high-risk teens and children in high-risk neighborhoods, equine assisted therapy programs. So I've been in the mental health field, and I'm not justifying it. I'm just explaining to you guys the energy and how things can be taken wrong. And could it be, I'm so tired. I need coffee. Sorry, guys. I'm going to be drinking coffee while we do this. Could there also be a shadow way of that? Well, of course. In human design, if you're looking at the not self, and now he's saying things to get attention, he's doing things to get attention because he feels like he's not being heard. Yeah, it's probably not going to be taken well. I don't know. Let me know in the comments, guys, and on the replay. I think I might have accidentally turned off my comments the other day, which is, I didn't realize until afterwards. I looked at the replay and it said comments disabled. So I'm sorry if I did that. I don't know how to fix it. I'll try and fix it. I feel like, I'm at that age. My youngest brother always calls me a noob. And I feel like I'm at that age where it's like when I was a kid and I look at my mom, like, how do you not know how to do this? Like, it's so easy. It's just technology. It's like, all the kids know how to do it, right? I'm at that age where it's like, it hurts my brain to figure out technology. But I just have to accept it because I'm not going to get any younger. Okay. One thing I also want to look at is, again, I come from an esoteric, well, I've studied with a lot of Western astrologers, but I'm very well-known Western astrologers for many, many years. My approach combines esoteric, Vedic, and Western, which is controversial. But I like it and it works for me. So I can just keep rolling with it. So that's why for most people, you're not going to hear the Vulcan point spoken about. But here you do, because we talk about that. So Vulcan's here. Okay, so we have Vulcan. It's this little, like, almost looks like a hammer. Should look like a hammer, a V with a line through it. Vulcan is in Aquarius. Now, yeah. Conjunct with Pallas, the sun. and Lilith. That's a lot of energy, guys. He has a lot of like the dark goddess energy that's in major points. Like Pluto, like I know a lot of people don't see Pluto as dark goddess. I do, with the moon, Lilith, with the sun. And Lilith in like distorted energy. I want you guys to think of Lilith in distorted energy. So if we're looking at her from the faces of the feminine, which is also like a psychology, Carl Jungian approach, if we look at Lilith from the faces of the feminine, in her distorted state, and of course these apply to men as well when we're looking at this, her distorted state. Well, who is Lilith in her distorted state? First of all, what was the story of Lilith? Lilith was Adam's first wife, right? And she refused to submit and was kicked out of the Garden of Eden. So Lilith was Adam's first wife. When we're looking at Lilith energy in a distorted state, and I apply that to astrology as well. When we look at Lilith from distortion, she was like running around sleeping with demons and like stealing babies because her babies were stolen from her. She wasn't allowed because she left. She was kicked out, cast from the Garden of Eden. Because she was cast out, she wasn't allowed to have babies. So she went through this like distorted era. Like if her Eras tour was going down right now, the beginning of her Eras tour was her sleeping with demons and stealing babies era. So that's the distortion of Lilith. And then the exalted state of Lilith is really like this energy of independence, self-expression, unapologetically owning who you are. Sexual desires can be a big one for Lilith as well. But there's like, which we also know he had issues in that realm. I can't say the word though, because my stream will get banned. But yeah, it's like this energy of like independence and raw power and going for what you want and like tearing down things that don't work in a good way, because that's also good. You need to get rid of shit that doesn't work. So it's just interesting to me that, you know, with his son, with Vulcan, with Pallas Athena. Athena is also another goddess. Athena also has a shadow state. She is who cursed Medusa. We're all getting like a Greek mythology lesson today. We're learning about Lilith and the Garden of Eden. Like, sit around, friends. We're just going through all the different expressions of the your natal chart, the asteroids, and the goddess markings. But Athena, you know, the thing with Athena is she's also known as leadership. And she cursed Medusa when she felt that Medusa walked out of line or stepped out of line. Well, how interesting that we have this energy together. Yeah, his sun in Aquarius. Now, sun in Aquarius energy, I quite like that energy. Yeah, it can be like a very unconventional, I like to call it, and this might be a little too esoteric for viewers here, but we're going to go there, like starseed type energy, right? Like unconventional, that hippy dippy, the way he was described, hippy dippy can be very much that sun, especially squaring moon in Aquarius. Yeah, kind of trying to go against a convention, go against this stream, testing ideas out. It can be very like an exciting energy. It can also be rebellious energy. So how interesting that we have this like potentially rebellious, unconventional energy, that hippy dippy energy, which he has been described as, with Lilith, with Vulcan, with Pallas Athena. And the moon square Vulcan. Hi, Julia. Hi, sweetheart. It's my dog. So when we're looking at the moon square Vulcan as well, that's a very it's esoteric astrology, but also esoteric combination where you're really challenged to let go of ingrained habits. Vulcan is Greek mythology as well. You're challenged to let go of ingrained habits that are holding you back. So we've heard, and he's been honest, that he struggled with addiction to certain things. That's very much the shadow of Vulcan here. Now, the shadow of Vulcan with Pallas Athena, again, Pallas Athena's leadership, the exalted state is leadership. The shadow is cursing Medusa when she felt wronged. That's interesting, right? It's interesting to me because, again, when it's going to make more sense when you see me break down their human design. but he's compromised in terms of power from both Blake and Ryan. So he might felt like almost that like curse you because you did this to me. Like you made me feel this way. Yeah. I think there's a lot to be said here, and it has the potential, free will and all, right? Free will and all. The exalted state of leadership. I think it's Ryan that compromises his leadership gate in human design. I think it's Ryan. And one of the articles I've read is that Ryan apparently had this massive issue with him at Ryan's place, and they were like fighting over fat shaming Blake. I think a lot of this is just their energy. To be honest, I think a lot of it is just misunderstanding. But then the problem is, especially when we look at Justin, I think it's someone that's really struggled in many ways. It could tip this energy, especially Lilith and Pallas Athena, into this like distorted state. Like, how do I get back at you for what you did to me? Does that make it okay if he was making someone uncomfortable on set, either intentionally or not? No. Absolutely not. All I'm explaining is how this energy could work. So yeah, that's interesting to me, especially the moon square the Vulcan, letting go of ingrained habits. I wonder, I find, and I've been in the spiritual world for a long time, and combining like psychology and the spirituality and astrology, and I love pop culture. You'll never get pop culture out of me. That's why I do these readings, because I just love it. I find a lot of people, we used to joke when I was in psychology in university, we used to joke that people that are drawn to psychology are the ones with issues. Right? So my childhood was very like unsettled, a lot of issues in the home. And I remember when I was a kid, I used to think like I want to go and learn psychology so I can help kids that have gone through issues in their home. And I had left home very young. I think it was in grade 7 or 8. Or no, it would have been high school. Not 7 or 8. It would have been high school. But either way, left home really young. But that's what drove me to psychology. And then the stars, I was always, from the time I was like 2, staring up at the stars and convinced I came from them. But for astrology and spirituality, let's use spirituality. I find a lot of people are drawn to spirituality as like uncovering their shadows and working through those shadows and letting go of ingrained habits and bettering themselves. So it's just, for me, the way I see this energy here of his moon square Vulcan is he was trying to work on those unconscious patterns that were dictating his life and dictating his future. We're trying to consciously work on that to become a better man. And I do think there's probably an aspect, I know people pick on him for like the feminist and ally angle. If I'm being honest, I think it's definitely who he wants to be. I genuinely believe that. Does it mean he's made no mistakes? No, of course not. But I do believe, looking at his chart, he was drawn to spirituality, especially Vulcan square the moon, drawn to spirituality to better himself and to deal with some of these shadows and some subconscious issues and addictions and habits that he wanted to break. Now, does it mean when you break a habit, that's just like never comes back? No. No. Does it make him right? No. If he did the things that are being said on set, I still think, and I told you guys, and now his counter lawsuit, or not counter, I guess it's towards New York Times or whatever it is showing that there was more to the story. But I do believe, you're drawn to spirituality, you're drawn to shadow work to be better. But it doesn't mean your patterns go. It doesn't mean ingrained habits are just like poof, gone. And it's usually a lifelong battle to stay on that track. Ultimately, I speak from experience, as well as working with thousands of clients over the years in psychology and in astrology and human design. Like, it's all those shadow patterns are going to be there. And we look at it from a gene keys perspective of you always come back through to the shadow in a new frequency and a new layer and expression of self. And you're meeting yourself in a new way, but you're meeting new shadows in a new way. So I do think that with this Vulcan position, square the moon, Pallas and Lilith, that Ryan and Blake brought up a lot of those shadows that he'd been working really hard to suppress. And the distorted state of Lilith and Pallas came out, or Athena. Whereas there could have been the exalted state of like that leadership and new habits around leadership and being your authentic self and expressing yourself. Well, he felt, I can't say for sure, of course, I'm not saying like I am a mouthpiece for Justin Baldoni. I'm not. What this energy shows me is he felt, especially when we combine the human design, that his voice wasn't being heard. He was losing power on the set, and it had the potential to push the shadow aspects of Lilith and Athena forward. So the shadow aspects of Lilith are like action, Mars with the moon, action that's not really aligned, that's distorted. That's like, like I said, if she was doing the Taylor Swift tour, Eras tour, it'd be, the time where she's sleeping with demons, that kind of energy. And the Pallas Athena energy of cursing someone. Now, I'm not blaming Blake and Ryan either. I think these three people should have always stayed away from each other. They were not meant to be around each other at all. At all. If I saw their energy before they ever met, I'd be like, please, for the love of all things holy, do not put those three people together. They're not meant to be around each other. They're not meant to get along. And, I think there's something to be said, and I'm not excusing if certain things happen on set. I am not excusing that. There's something to be said, like, who are you? Let's all have like a reflection moment. And again, it's going to make more sense when we look at the human design layer. So make sure to subscribe, like, get notifications so you hear when I go live around that. There's something to be said when you are around someone, and when you work with human design, you start to see these energies at play. It becomes more obvious when you're around people that compromise you. And that's not a good thing in human design. It means that someone unintentionally is making you feel either like unseen or unheard, or your views don't matter, because they have, oh man, I shouldn't have gotten into this here, but a gate, you have a gate, and the other person has a channel. So you have a trait and they have a strength. So that strength kind of like squashes out your trait. And so unintentionally, the other person, so Ryan or Blake in the situation, unintentionally can make him feel like he has no power on set. He has no voice on set, and it's being taken over, whether that's true or not, whether it was their intention or not. Energetically, your energy speaks before you do. So it was setting up dynamics of issues from day one. From day one. All right. So he was, just by the very nature of their energy, going to feel like he had no power on set, and they were trying to take the power over, and they were taking away his leadership, Ryan in particular. Not seeing him as a leader, trying to rewrite the script, et cetera, et cetera. And they might have been doing that literally, which would have made those paranoias worse, right? Because it's like, shit, it's actually true. It's actually happening. They should have never been around each other. They're just not meant to be around each other. Now, when we're looking at the Vulcan as well with the sun, this can be, it's like having the courage to overcome those habits, and the courage to kind of forge your own journey forward. And look what happened, right? So it can also be like you have this courage to forge your own path. You have the courage, say, for example, like starting Wayfair Studios. And I don't know much about him. I'm going to be honest. I know he apparently co-owns Wayfair or something. And that's his studio. I think with Vulcan here, with the sun, there was a lot of energy of like, this was his way of like doing projects that are important to him and paving his own path. Well, again, how does that make you feel if someone's coming in and like taking that away, either intentionally or not? Yeah. It's just a tough energy for all of them to have together. And, with the sun square Mars as well, it can be the risk taker, but also being accident prone. It can be the risk taker, but also from an energy of like, then shit happens. Especially when we look at the fact that the sun, or sorry, not the sun, the moon is conjunct Mars. And we talked about that issue, right? The potential to be doing impulsive action, not understanding, not that he doesn't understand. I think he's someone that actually has developed a lot of emotional intelligence. Just bad habits can resurface. Someone that has the potential to blur the lines when they're in their shadow between assertiveness and and crossing boundaries, or assertiveness and aggression, right? Not physical aggression, but just aggression, like even in voice, right? Undefined throat wants to be heard, feeling like he's not being heard. So now it's not coming across assertive, it's coming across aggressive. And now their backs are up and they're pissed off because, he's being aggressive towards them and he's making me uncomfortable, et cetera, et cetera. This is not speaking to any harassment allegations, because obviously if that all happened, no excuse. I'm just explaining the energy of the two of them and some of the stuff that's come out. Now, the other thing with Sun square Mars, taking risks. Interestingly enough, in his suit against the New York Times, he's claiming that, and apparently, I haven't gone through all 87 pages. Apparently, another piece that was edited to fit a certain narrative was the part in the text messages where his two PR girls are like, this is why you hire me, because I'm that good. But apparently, if you look at the whole thread, just above that piece in the controversial text messages, they had been saying back and forth that they didn't even need to do anything. It wasn't even them that had planted this story. It happened organically. And they were kind of joking. Apparently even emojis were edited out. And they were joking yeah, I'm just that good. Now, in that context, I'd like to see the whole thread completely unedited, to be quite honest. I'd like to just see the whole thread dumped without anyone having any say over how it looks. And maybe that's what Justin did. That's a different energy. Who with their friends hasn't been like, oh yeah, I'm just that good, right? Or joked around. So with the Sun square Mars, with the taking risks, I think it was a risk to hire the PR company, especially the one that dealt with Johnny Depp. I'm not saying that I don't want to get into that drama in terms of who was right, who was wrong. I do think it was a risk. I think that was leaning into the Sun square Mars, where there's the potential to take risks. The thing too with Sun square Mars is another spot where there can be the difficulty discerning assertion versus aggression, or assertion versus crossing boundaries. It can be the potential for losing your temper with Sun square Mars. And also with that, damaging your career and reputation. However, I want to come back a little bit. When we're looking at this from the place of hiring that PR team, I do think it was a risk. And I believe he felt he had no choice. And I think we're going to see that come out more, where it was kind of I have no choice. I have to protect myself. And do I think that's just because of the HR complaints? No, I think there was more to the story than that. I do think there's going to be more to the story than that. Now, with Sun square Mars as well, there can be this energy of others can see you as pushy. When we have him again, when we're looking at him from the lens of undefined throat, they both have very strongly defined throats. He might have felt like he had to be pushy to be heard on his own set. He might have felt like he had to be pushy for anyone to actually listen to him. And then the problem with the fifth line from Human Design, again, is, well, now with the fifth line, people are burn you at the stake. So it's a really, his energy, I usually love working with clients like his energy, to be honest, because I really like action takers. I love people that are willing to take risks, take bold action, are willing to be authentically themselves, are willing to look at their shadow patterns and work on their shadow patterns. I love working with people because it's my belief as well that no one's perfect. So people that are human and mess up, again, it's not saying, please no one distort what I'm saying. It's not saying that means it's okay to harass people. But I love these very dynamic characters to work with and individuals to work with. And because I find I'm like that too. I mess up, I'm human. I just love the nuances of what it means to be human. And I really like his energy in terms of how his chart comes across. And the issue with charts like this and humans like this is when you get in that distorted energy, it can come across really bad. And for him, with Vulcan in this position, it can have old habits coming up. So for example, say he had really been truly desiring to be the man that is an ally and to be the man that is a feminist, or however you want to look at that. and he's been working on it all this time with such gritty, let's call it gritty charts and volatile is a better word, volatile charts and volatile energy. It's so easy for those habits to come back. And I do think that's an inner demon that he needs to work on, and he's very aware of it. I do think he's aware of it based on his chart, because it looks like it's something that he's been working on. Now, we have the Sun trine Chiron. We also have the Sun conjunct Pallas, which we kind of talked about. You know, when we're looking at the Sun conjunct Pallas, it's very transformative. It redefines leadership, and it takes on a new energy for leadership because she's all leadership. Again, interestingly enough, what you're going to see in the human design, Ryan Reynolds compromises his leadership. So his Sun conjunct Pallas is an energy that, like, he wants to lead, but he doesn't just want to lead. He wants to revolutionize. He wants to like bring a vision forward, turn a vision into reality. So like I said, for someone like his energy, I really believe that this idea and how he quote unquote comes across is who he actually wants to be. It's kind of like that fake it till you make it energy, but not really. I'm not saying that he's faking it, but that energy of like, this is who I want to be and this is who I'm striving towards. And we teach that in identity shifting and self-development, right? It's like, become that person, be that person. I still think he has a lot of shadows he's working through. But again, Sun conjunct Pallas, Athena, isn't just leading. Like, well, leading's a big piece of it for him, which Ryan Reynolds compromises for him. Not intentionally, just by very nature of the energy. And he wants to revolutionize. So I think he had such a strong vision in his head when we're looking at Sun conjunct Pallas Athena, such a strong vision in his head of how this was going to go. And it was like a massive trigger when, either intentionally or not, he felt that they were coming into the set, taking over, and his voice was no longer being heard. Yeah, I think that's the biggest thing. And I think that Sun conjunct Pallas is an area that is playing a big role in his Wayfair Studios, the projects he takes on, the projects he wants to do, but also in this issue, because you'll see it even more in his human design. Now, here's an interesting thing for me. Because I was reading, when I looked at his chart, I looked it up because I was like, to me, this comes across as someone that had issues with their family. But when I looked it up, I can't find anything about that, because he has the Sun square Juno. And usually what that's going to show us is someone that when they were young had issues in the home. Now, it can be positive, but for him and his history that he talks about and what he's worked through, I don't think it doesn't necessarily have to be like bad in terms of an abusive home. I just don't fully buy into him saying that everything was like copacetic at home. I just don't believe it. And it's the Sun with Juno that really gives that away. And it could have been an energy of, like, again, it doesn't have to be like what we define as bad. It could have been an energy of like he always had to strive and prove himself and be the best. And what a lot of people don't realize is that can also cause trauma and issues for kids, right? If you're always being like, it's never good enough and you always have to keep striving, that can cause a lot of issues. And I'm more willing to lean that way than anything else. I don't know. I just feel like there's this Sun square Juno, a lot of energy of like, a life lesson is finding balance, which we see because he's talked about addictions. He's talked about issues. I think that's what set him on the path of a spiritual journey. It just comes across as something Something was in the home, and I don't think it was abusive or anything. Like I said, for a lot of high performers I work with, and what I can relate to as well is like the issue coming from more of this place that you're never good enough. So you always have to strive and prove yourself, but then you get into bad habits and start creating, like his Vulcan, ingrained bad habits because of all that energy. Like eventually you just explode, right? And I just think of like when I was in university, I went through a phase where it's like it was like such bottled up energy from so much pressure, external expectations, that I just couldn't handle it anymore. And that's kind of the energy I get, but I'm not buying into fully that the relationship in the home was perfect. I just don't believe it. And the last thing I will say, because I'm already like, I planned on this being 20 minutes. I was like, I'll put aside an hour so we can do the natal chart and then the human design, and it'll be like an hour total. No, I could talk about this all day though. So, I guess an hour is better than streaming for 8 hours potentially. All right, where what was I saying? The last thing I want to talk about in terms of his chart is his Lilith. We've already talked about Lilith a little bit, but I actually want to take a little bit after talking about all of that just to revisit her. This position for her is like the outcast. And it's funny because I don't know if he's ever seen himself as an outcast. I don't know. Whether he's like consciously said it or like it's unconscious, but this is usually a very like outcast position for her, and a lot of issues in like friendships. And so that might also be, a part of the piece, the Lilith here, a part of the piece of how people say, or I heard Emily D. Baker, love her, again, love her. This is no shade towards Emily, say that, no one's come out in support of him. I like that position of Lilith is kind of like an outcast. I don't know, like your friendships, yeah, they're a little like crunchy, but I think this is the energy of, usually with Lilith here, is more from an energy of you hold such high expectations for yourself. And again, I think it comes back to the home and that Juno sun energy. You hold such high expectations for yourself. And what happens often is when someone holds such high expectations for themselves, they also hold that for others, and then no one meets that. Right? When you hold yourself to an insanely high standard, you usually hold others to that as well. And I think that's been a piece of where there can also be conflict with friendships or people in his life. And I think that's also the Lilith in Aquarius, where it can also add into that energy of not easy to work with. And I think it's because he has such high expectations of himself, which then bleeds over to others, which can cause issues in friendships. Yeah. Now, there can be as well with Lilith. Just looking at a couple other places, but I don't want to go too long. I mean, I'm like, do I go there? No, we can't. We've already been talking for an hour. There can be another issue with Lilith there of like also not willing to accept differences in your friendships or coworkers or differences of opinions. This can be like something that's very triggering social problems for you. So is that also a piece of it? It makes sense to me. I do think he wants to have control. I do think him being in control works best. But what happens when you put that against two other people that also want control? Like, I want you to think about their energy. It's like, is there anyone in your life that you just don't like and you can't put your finger on it? You just don't get along with them and you can't put your finger on it. You like, they just rub you the wrong damn way and you cannot figure out why. I'm going to show you that after. I'm going to end this stream and I'll probably just go live right away so then I can have lunch after that one. But I want them to be two separate streams. I'm going to show you why that works and how it works in human design and why this was the case for the three of them. The three of them, like, and compromise doesn't have to necessarily be bad, But when you have such strong characters with, especially Justin as a volatile energy, that doesn't mean bad, but it's the potential. It's like, you shake the pop bottle enough and eventually it can explode. And he knows this. He's been working on it. I believe that. I don't know him personally, but I really believe when we see the energy of Pluto, Moon, Mars, Sun, Lilith, Vulcan, Pallas Athena, especially, this is someone that's very aware of those bad habits, especially Vulcan in this position, very aware of those bad habits that need to go. And I think that's what led him to spirituality. And I think that's what's led him to, like, his mistakes have led him to want to be a better person. From human design perspective, we look at it as your mess is your message. Like, the shit you've gone through is what drives you to be a better person and help others. And I think that's a big piece of it. I also think because they compromise each other so drastically, in very important ways, it is very important for him to be in control. It's very important for him to be heard and be able to express his emotions and feel seen for them and to have a leadership role. Those are very important pieces of his energy. And so when you have people that intentionally or not, the energy speaks before you do, intentionally or not, compromise that, you're setting it up for disaster. And people are human and people suck sometimes. I didn't even see that. Psyche with Mercury. Oh, we can't go there. We'll be here all day. If you guys ever want like a 10-hour stream on astrology, let me know. I mean, I can talk for 10 hours on astrology. Trust me on that. It's so funny because people are leaving comments and they're like, what about this or this or this in the natal chart? I'm like, girl, I'm trying to keep them short, but I could talk all day. I used to have 300 videos up on YouTube. I deleted everything. So unfortunately, that means my channel starts from scratch in the YouTube algorithm. But it also looks like I just started, but I haven't. I deleted everything in 2024. I literally got to a place where I was like, screw this for many reasons, multiple reasons. I was like, screw this, not doing it anymore, not being on social media, not being on YouTube, don't want to have it, no. And I had a lot of people stealing a lot of my human design content. So I shut her all down, deleted everything. And then I was like, I actually love doing this. So I came back. But if you guys want long streams, I'm fine to do long streams. I can talk. I have a defined throat. I can talk. All right, let's leave it at that. But that is interesting. Psyche with Mercury. That's really interesting. And I can't believe I missed that. All right, we're going to leave it at that. Let me know in the comments, what do you think? What do you think about this new lawsuit? Check out the Variety article. So they obviously got the exclusive. There's an article on Variety that lays it out. Does it shift your perspective when you start to see the entirety of the text messages and you see the context that they're in? Does it change how you see the situation when it turns out she invited him to her trailer while she was breastfeeding? I don't know. You tell me, guys. You tell me. I want to hear your perspective on this. I want to hear, does it shift? And that's the PR game, tug of war on public perception. So what I encourage you to just do is to realize that that's what's being done to your psyche. Yeah, that's what's being done to your mind. We are highly suggestible beings. That's all right, part of being human. But just keep that in mind. Both sides are going to have an angle that they're bringing forward. Play in the gray zone. Play in the zone of like, what's really going on here. And I want to hear your thoughts. All right, I'm going to close this down, and I'm pretty much going to come back live right away. I'm going to get some more water and more coffee. I'm going to come back live right away. So hang out if you want to see the human design piece of this, and we'll chat human design. I will look at breaking down Justin's chart and why there were so many issues with Ryan and Blake. All right, I'll see you guys in that one. Bye, guys.